he reaped the reward of that, and it gave him a great opportunity. It put him back on the map. That win at Cadwell, he'd never won a BSB race before. He'd never won a BSB race, and we definitely had never ever won a BSB race.
And at this point, Pete Aikman's been in BSB since he was 17.
Yeah.
Was that same race Gary Mason was on the podium? For Dave Tyson's team?
No, was that not here? I can't remember.
That was a Cadwell as well, a wet race at Cadwell. That's all.
I can't remember.
It was some rain coming down that day.
It was bad. But to be fair, it was one of them that sort of flitting backwards and forwards. When I spoke to Shaky about doing the deal with Dixon, because he was his manager at the time, and I said to him, I said, what about the Cadwell Park race? And I backed it off about halfway through. I just thought Pete's nowhere in the championship, and I've got a championship to think about. To be fair, I was stood on pit wall that day, and that bloke, that number 67, was putting purple sectors in everywhere.
From that race, Hickman had the fastest wet lap of Cadwell Park. I think it was either a 36 or a 38.
It was unreal.
In the wet.
Unreal.
Full wet.
Yeah.
I think it was 30. Can you remember? It was
I can't remember.
37.
I'll look back now you say it, but it was impressive. I think he was like 4.2 seconds ahead of Shaky at one point in the race, and I give Shane the due. Middle of the race, I thought we're done for. He pulled it back to I think about 1.2, and Dave Hickman, Pete's dad, always used to do the pit board, and he used to make me piss because if he had 1.2, he'd give him like 0.3, and I'm like, Dave, it's wet. He's going to fucking push. And he was like, we need him to push. If not, he's going to lose it. And I'm like, yeah, but, we've got a bit more of a gap than that. And he'd always like reduce the gap,
Good lad.
And I can imagine probably by this point, Pete's used to the gap and he's probably thinking, I've got 1.3.
His dad,
Loads of people have done that. I would hate that if someone wasn't giving me my actual gaps. Yeah. When I first started racing, I remember one of my mates' dads always used to do that. And if you had a big gap, he would give him a small one to keep him on his toes. Imagine if you crashed and as you go down the road, you look behind and you had like 10 seconds. Yeah. I want to know exactly what
it is.
You're calculated though, son. You're calculated.
And like I say, he pulled it in and he was pushing. I remember thinking, fuck, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And now it's like turned from a race win. It's almost like a championship to us. Do you know what I mean? And to be fair to Pete, he pulled it out and he'd seen the gap coming down. It's in the gap coming down. And he responded and he went again. And I remember thinking, this thing's not coming home at this point. And, probably it was deep into the race when he done that time because the rain eased a little bit. It was heavy sort of to start the race to mid, and then it eased a little bit. And it's another iconic picture I've got up in the workshop. We're all on pit wall, probably over pit wall to be fair. And he's on the back wheel on the start-finish straight at Cadwell. And we all know Pete loves a wheelie. And to be fair, he's picked the thing up coming out of barn and he's on the back wheel. And I remember thinking, Jesus Christ, there's water everywhere. And I thought, if he fucking aquaplanes and don't make the line. And then I remember thinking, they're far enough ahead. If he does it, his arse, he's probably going to slide over anyway. Do you know what I mean? But it's just another one of those iconic pictures. And there's Dave, and you can see the pit board still with the numbers on it, like P1, like plus nothing. Do you know what I mean? No, it's more than that. Don't get me wrong, it's more than that. But it weren't the gap it was, and it just, you look at them and you think, they were good days. That it's little snippets in your life that really stay with you.
Did he take the pit board tactic over when he got Jake on board then?
No, to be fair, I'm one of them people. You've got what you got,
Yeah.
You need to know what's behind you and where they are.